I had no money. I had a mediocre business plan and was like, hey man, just, take a shot at me. It's like a small space. Let's make it happen. But during that time, the biggest thing that I learned wasn't how to start and or run and or grow a business. The biggest thing that I learned is that it's because of that question that I feel like I realized that the principle here is connected. I made the decision to work to get good. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bonde Johnson. My name is Bonde, and here we have honest conversations about coaching, business, leadership, and long-term athlete development in the sport of cheerleading. Today, we're going to talk about removing the ceiling, and I mean the ceiling of your potential. So truth be told, I graduated, and I had no idea what I was doing. I moved to Central Florida from Tallahassee, where I was at Florida State, and I decided to get my real estate license because I graduated with a degree in dietetics. And the whole time you're in that degree, they're kind of pushing you a clinical route. And I was like, I don't want to do clinical. So I graduated, didn't feel like I had a lot of resources on like what to do with the degree. So I figured, well, I get a real estate license and then work, make some money, kind of build a business for myself and see where that goes. So I did, and then I got a phone call from Dr. Gordon, or an email, and his wife was opening a lab at Florida State. He had a lab, she got a grant, and was going to conduct a study and needed help. So he contacted me because during my time at Florida State, I wanted to figure out if I wanted to go the research route, right? Where I go into a grad program and it's research focused. So I come up with some sort of thesis and get a master's with that, maybe PhD. So I wanted to see what the research world was like. I worked for Dr. Gordon my whole senior year for free. I shadowed him. I helped out in the lab, and he was like, you don't have to show up, right? Like, you're not getting paid, like, no. And I was like, no, I know. And I still showed up, like, every day, every week. And I think because of that, he was like, well, this kid's got work ethic. So that's the reason I got that job. And I went up there, and I functioned as a lab tech while practicing real estate in Tallahassee. I hung my license with Keller Williams. Then I learned that as an employee at Florida State, I could get my master's for free. So I enrolled in an MBA program with a focus in real estate because I was like, why not? Let's do this real estate thing. I think real estate's cool. And I was also doing stunt privates on the side. So I would wake up and I would work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the lab. And then I would work real estate from like 2 to, 6 o'clock. And then I would do stunt privates from like 6 to 9. That was my life every day because I needed to figure out I didn't have a career. So long story short, I started leaning more into the real estate. I left my position doing research at Florida State to take a job in Miami. I'm driving to Miami and I get a phone call. I'm like, hey, what's up? The guy that hired me for this job in Miami said, hey, this whole COVID thing, what's happening? Yeah, well, everybody's out of office, so that doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, well, I'm like on my way I quit my job. And he was like, yeah, sorry, man. I was like, wow, okay. Life doesn't wait for anybody. Like, putting the power in other people's hands kind of sucks because you could then literally like have rented an apartment somewhere and be driving and they tell you that like you don't have a job. And what do you do? Like, there's nothing you can do. So I was like, man, other people having control of my life is just like not it. So I landed in Jacksonville and I sent out my resume to like 25 companies a day, okay? So after sending out maybe 500 resumes to 500 companies, I got back from some brokerage company. Everybody was like, we're not hiring because of COVID. And then I finally got some brokerage companies that were like, well, let's meet, let's talk. I was like, okay. So I went and met with some of them. Long story short, got hired by a brokerage firm here in Jacksonville. I then started working in office leasing as a tenant rep agent, right? So I'm helping tenants lease office space in a market where everybody is working from home because COVID. So you can imagine that I was basically just spinning my wheels. But I showed up every day and sat at my desk for like 10, 12 hours a day trying to get this stuff done. I was commission-based, so I was working 80 hours a week, making $0 until finally I landed one deal in the industrial market, which obviously was still booming. Office wasn't, but I shifted to investment brokerage. I found this opportunity to close this deal in industrial, and I was cut in on that deal. Luckily, that's a whole nother story there that I could unpack. But I took on a role with a group that was out of California because I didn't want to be limited to Jacksonville. Now I'm like Peacock, you got to let me fly. So I didn't want to be confined to Jacksonville. I was working all over the place with them. Closed a deal. It was about $10,000, but after taxes, like $7,500. I said, you know what? I don't want to do this commercial real estate stuff anymore. At least not right now. I was doing stunt privates on the side still in Jacksonville because I found a gym to work out of. And I was like, I want to pursue this. There's a lot of interest here. It's fun. I like coaching, the impact that you get to have on athletes. So I decided to step away. Everybody thought I was crazy. I then used my experience in commercial real estate to find a building to lease. And the landlord was like, why should I lease from you? I had no money. I had a mediocre business plan and was like, hey man, just, take a shot at me. It's like a small space. Let's make it happen. So I convinced him somehow to do that, which was a hurdle I didn't anticipate, right? I thought like, well, let me just find some space. And all of a sudden people are like, no. And you're like, what? But I want to pay you. And they're like, no. So I got over that hurdle, luckily leveraged some connections that I had in real estate. And with, like I said, a mediocre business plan, I just started. And then as the time went on, I refined and I started again, and then I refined and then started again. And I repeated that process like year after year after year. But during that time, the biggest thing that I learned wasn't how to start and or run and or grow a business. The biggest thing that I learned is that nobody's coming. Nobody's coming to help you. Nobody's coming to tell you when to do this or when to do that, or when to grow, or when to sit back, or when to fire an employee, when to hire an employee, when to hire a payroll service, when to set up all these accounts of like the DOR and the IRS. And nobody's coming along to tell you any of that stuff. And it's great news because that's when I realized like I'm in the driver's seat. I'm not the kid driving down to Miami getting a phone call from somebody saying, hey, sorry, bud, there's no job for you. I'm the one now that's calling the shots, and my willingness to get up every day and show up and just push that needle along, that is what's going to dictate my success, not anybody else. I learned that the moment you stop waiting, you remove the ceiling from your potential. You put the power right back where it belongs, which is in your own hands. So now's about the time when everybody starts going, hey, Bonde, what does that have to do with cheerleading? I'll tell you, it doesn't just have to do with cheerleading, but I'm going to tie it back into cheerleading. I get asked all the time, Bonde, where did you cheer in college? And I'm like, Florida State. People are like, what? Florida State's not a good cheer team. Like, why are you good? And it's because of that question that I feel like I realized that the principle here is connected. It's not just business, but it's also sport. I made the decision to work to get good. I didn't wait for somebody to tell me that I could get good at cheerleading. I didn't wait for the conditions to be perfect. I didn't wait to have all the resources available. I didn't wait for anything. I just started. Then I kept going. And I think that's the biggest mistake athletes make. They're waiting. They're waiting to be noticed. They're waiting to be motivated. They're waiting to be put first. They're waiting for better teammates. They're waiting for a better coach. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity that's never going to come along. And the problem with waiting is that waiting becomes a habit. Action also becomes a habit. So you get to make a choice. Do I want to choose waiting or do I want to choose action? And I'm here to tell you, wait for nobody. Wait for nothing. Take the action. Take ownership. Put the control in your hands so that you're the one that is dictating, responsible for your fate, regardless of what that thing is. It could be painting. It could be stunting and tumbling. It could be building a business. It could be getting good at origami, making latte art. It doesn't matter. Today, hybrid functions without my physical presence. I no longer have to be here every second of every day. Nobody told me how to or when to or why to build a business that functions autonomously. It's just something that I decided I wanted, and I showed up every day for years, just slowly pushing the needle along to where now I look back and go, awesome, like how cool. I'm 29 years old, and I'm damn proud of that. But none of that happened because I had some grand plan. I took ownership. I acted. Then I refined. Then I took more action. Then I refined again. And I repeated that process over years. That's it. It's not motivation. It's not talent. It's no sort of external force. It's just ownership. It's taking ownership and it's acting on that day in and day out, regardless of the circumstance. The moment you take things into your own hands, you lift the ceiling off your potential. And it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. Building a business, learning how to stunt and tumble, just becoming a better athlete overall. Like I said, you could become a master chess player. You could paint figurines. You take ownership. You put the control in your hands. You are lifting and removing that ceiling from your potential. The principle never changes, all right? Only the environment and the approach. So everybody, get out there, get after it, take ownership. Life sucks. You're not good at stunting. You're not a good athlete, whatever. That's on you. Take ownership. Fix it. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will. To show up and make it happen. All right. It's up to you and nobody else. Don't complain about that. Be excited about that, because that means that you have the control to fix it, just like you have the control and responsibility to mess it up. Okay. A little bit of harsh love from me, but I want to see everybody remove the ceiling from their potential and whatever it is that they're doing. Thank you all for continuing to listen. I appreciate you, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.